Well, La Cura is a collaborative exhibition between ourselves and Studio Too Good, run by designer Faye Too Good. The concept of La Cura, hence the cure, is meant to be the sort of antithesis of the other exhibits at the Milan Design Week. There's so much sensory overload that we felt that for this project it would be good to create something that was far more calm or restorative as an experience, but it's actually becoming more of a performance, a spectacle, whereby the audience actually is a participant in the sort of ritualistic performance that is taking place. We came in sort of halfway through the concept phase of the project and were simply to give our take on light and on sound. Light and sound are very powerful mediums when it comes to performance or the dramatification of a space. And we've always been very conscious of having these parts being connected to the viewer in that, through light, a space is revealed. In this context, there's only one light source in the space, which is then illuminating a platform of sculptures that the audience is actually making. It's all through rigorous sketching and photography and drawing, a lot of drawing. We've been drawing relentlessly for this project, trying to create visualizations and to draw structurally how what we're making relates to the space, and considering how there's several points within the performance of La Cura, the way that people will see the spectacle. Lots of meetings and lots of coffee. It's been quite a challenge because all of our previous projects have been sort of self-initiated. This is actually the first time for us that we've actually collaborated with another designer. We came in to the project sort of halfway, essentially, as more than consultants, because of becoming fully involved in the project. We've had consecutive meetings together with Faye where we've been designing together and showing her our response in our style. It's a meeting of styles and design concepts, but essentially she wanted to express a rebirth of ideas and quite a primal design perspective. The shapes, the lighting object that we make, very shallow aluminium dome, which acts as a reflector of light from the center that encompasses the space and focuses on the sculptures that are made as well. I think what is important is that the concept of La Cura is receptive, so that it's something that people who come to the exhibition feel invited to, and that they can actually feel at ease in this, what would be quite a surreal experience. It's a matter of harnessing the sound and the light, which are choreographed together, but it's also choreographed to the time of the performance. In real time is half an hour, but we want to create a secondary pulse within the space so that people feel like they're entering a clock with a different speed. I think the main challenge has actually been with the production company in Italy. It's very, very strict in terms of having to deal with a lot of the logistical procedures, ensuring that the materials are regulated, and it's a very exhausting process just doing that, and it takes quite a lot of energy out of the actual design. Quadraphonic stands for four, so four speakers, whereas La Cura, we're having sounds that radiate outwards and then also from the side. Enclosure was meant to be a very intense installation whereby four speakers positioned around the viewer or around the listener. Each speaker has its own voice, essentially, so whether it's natural sounds or whether it's generated sound, there's no phasing between the two. There's the independent voices, essentially, and then these voices are then choreographed to bright hot light. When you stand in the center of these speakers, there's a sound coming from different sides. There's also the light, and then there's also the heat. It focuses your attention towards the sound, and because it's so bright, it makes your eyes close. You're unable to see the space, the wider context of the space that you just came into. It's about removing you from one space and creating that distinction between the intervention and the architectural. There wasn't really a brief. We were simply given the space, which is this concrete bunker, and basically said, here is the space, come up with a response. The first thing I instinctively imagined was that here is a concrete bunker. It's very hard acoustically. So I thought, how can we maximize this to actually create reflections and produce anomalies of standing waves? The actual speakers that we used weren't that large or necessarily powerful, but because of the way that they were amplified in the room, they would then take on a much larger presence. It's more than sound, actually. It's sort of kinesthetic. There's quite interesting incidentals that came out of the project. Because of the sounds coming around you, you also had a breeze as well, that you could actually feel the air being pushed towards you. I quite like the notion of sound and heat being combined as well. So you had a warmth coming from the sound as well. In the case of Enclosure, the compositions were written by myself, but together with Will, where we were then testing these sounds in the space and then remixing them and rewriting in the actual context as well. Will has a strong interest in writing, and I share that, but then I also bring in the sound side very strongly. All of the work is shared, but I think sometimes when these projects were very, very short for time, that we have to sort of designate roles. We like to share the work. Well, I think it's that whenever we go to a space, we see it differently. We have this consciousness of spaces, and because of my musical background as well, I've always been fascinated by the sounds of spaces. I think it's much more, it's much deeper than just listening. I'm very interested in the kinesthetic side of things. You feel sound as much as you hear it. At the moment, we're really inspired by photography, by fashion and theatre. We've been going to see a lot of multimedia installations and theatre productions at the moment, and there's a lot of exciting, very clever cross-disciplinary work going on. I think that at the moment is what is steering our work.